every weekend when we come here to Mass following the homily, whoever preaches it, we stand and we profess our common faith in the Nicene Creed. Together we proclaim in those ancient and sacred words that Christians have prayed for 17 centuries. And in that creed we profess that we believe that Jesus ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. And in the very next sentence we say, we also believe he will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead. All of church history and all of our lives occur right between those two lines, between his ascension, his return to heaven, and his second coming at the end of time. Today we are celebrating and remembering his ascension. The scriptures we just heard tell us the basic facts. In the first reading, Jesus was lifted up and a cloud took him from their sight. And in the second reading, the Father seated him at his right hand in the heavens. Now, there are three moments in our Lord's earthly life that naturally receive special attention: his birth, his death, and his resurrection. And so we as Catholics celebrate with great solemnity Christmas, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. But even though today the Ascension stands right alongside all of those in both the Creed and the Scriptures, it often receives far less attention. In fact, many of you know the actual day of the Ascension was Thursday, the 40th day after Easter. But in almost all of our nation, the bishops have moved this celebration to Sunday. And so it can even seem to us that this is secondary. It can be overlooked. But I think this is both dangerous and untrue, for the Ascension is not the end of Christ's presence in the world, but it's a beginning. It's a beginning of how the risen and glorified Lord now reigns, now remains, and now continues his saving work. To get into that, first of all, we need to acknowledge an apparent contradiction, an apparent tension in our first reading in our gospel. In our first reading, the Acts of the Apostles, Jesus ascends into heaven, and the 11 stand staring upwards. To their own eyes and their experience, Jesus has departed. His visible presence is gone. Those two angels even ask, "Why are you standing there looking at the sky?" But in the gospel I just read, the final words that Jesus speaks in the Gospel of Matthew are, "Behold, I am with you always until the end of the age." So which is it? Has he departed or does he remain? Well, unsurprisingly, both of those are true. While his body did ascend into heaven, we know that that did not eliminate his presence on earth. Rather, it expanded it. We got a hint of this in a gospel a few weeks back. It was Easter Sunday. If you remember, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and thought the body of Jesus had been stolen, and she eventually recognized Jesus when he called her by name. And then she tried to grab a hold of him, but he said, "Stop holding on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father." Jesus was not rejecting her. Rather, he was readying her for something greater that would happen at the Ascension. For before his ascension, Jesus was visibly present to his apostles and his disciples. Only those within earshot could hear him. Only those in line of sight could see him. But now, precisely by and through the ascension, his presence is no longer confined. It's no longer constricted in that same way. For as St. Paul tells us in the second reading, Jesus reigns at the right hand of the Father. And because he reigns from heaven, he can be present to all of his people in all ages around the entire world. That's not news to us as Catholics. We know that. Because Jesus makes himself present, first of all, in the Most Holy Eucharist. At every Mass, he is really, truly here. It's not merely symbolically or just emotionally or only spiritually in some vague sense. Jesus is truly, substantially, sacramentally present. The same Jesus who ascended that day truly and really comes to us here this day, upon this altar, and he gives himself to us. But we also know that's not the only way he remains present. In that first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, there's a word that's easy to miss. St. Luke writes that in his first book, by which he means the Gospel of Luke, he wrote all that Jesus began to do and teach. That began is the key word. Meaning that all the stuff he wrote in the Gospel of Luke, all that Jesus said and did, all the miracles Jesus worked, all of that was only the beginning. Because Jesus continues to work and teach now, in our time, in the age of the church, between the Ascension and the Second Coming. He continues to speak and act. Through the church, Jesus still forgives, still teaches, still heals, still sanctifies, still strengthens. St. Paul tells us in the second reading, Christ reigns as head over all things for the church. He is our king, and he reigns over this world, and he continues to speak and act through his church. So while at the Ascension, Jesus' physical body did depart, both his Eucharistic body in Holy Communion and his mystical body in the church remain. And that's why the Ascension is not about Jesus going away. It's about him remaining with us in these new ways. So the angels show up when they tell the 11, stop staring at the sky. You have work to do. And that work we heard at the end of today's gospel. Jesus entrusted a mission to the 11. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. They who once followed Jesus now need to become witnesses to Jesus. Ascension becomes mission. And so for the last 2,000 years, the church has continued that mission through the apostles, through their successors, the bishops, but also, as we know, through faithful women and men of every age, every people, every nation, every tongue, including us. Today, Ascension Sunday, we don't simply celebrate something that Jesus did, accomplished a long time ago. We recognize that what happened a long time ago had a very real purpose, so that he could remain with us in new ways, in the Eucharist and in the church. The Ascension is not the end of his work. It's the beginning of how the risen and glorified Lord now reigns, remains, and continues his saving work. And so today at this Mass, as we come forward in a few moments to receive Jesus in the Eucharist, let us remember his presence here, and his mission. As he ascended into heaven, he comes down from heaven today sacramentally upon this altar. And we, worshiping him here, now go out there. We are sent outward to the world. For as we live in these times between those two lines of the creed, he ascended into heaven, and he will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead. He remains present to us. And he desires to continue his saving work in the world through us. Happy Ascension Sunday. May God bless you all.